So far, this presentation will be the last presentation of the series of global environmental problems, and this will be not only about strictly environmental problems, but on sustainable development. And sustainable development is related not only to environmental problems, but also to social and economic problems. There is a difference between economical and economic. Economic is related to economy, and economical means saving energy, saving money. Basically, economical is saving money, which is also important in sustainable development. Economical equipment, economical refrigerators, economical ovens, and any other electronic devices are very important as well. The concept of sustainable development is quite an old concept. The pioneer of this concept is regarded Hans Carl von Carlowitz. He lived on the turn of 17th and 18th century, and he was accountant by profession. And he looked, as an accountant, he looked at economic aspects of sustainable development in the forests. So his idea was that the forest must be exploited in such a way that it will be allowed to grow again, and that we do not cut down the forest completely. So the exploitation of forests should be sustainable. When we talk about sustainable development, we must not forget about Valery Gettel. He was the rector of the HGH University of Science and Technology, so that is one of the reasons we must not forget about him. But also he contributed to the concept of sustainable development, and his idea was to create a special team. The name of this team can be translated as the issues of the protection of natural resources and providing sustainability of their use. So he focused on the sustainability of the use of natural resources. He was also the founder of the League for the Protection of Nature, and he was very active in the protection of nature, both living and non-living. And by profession, he was a geologist. So that's why he was also interested in minerals, in the examples of non-living nature. But the time when the concept of sustainable development became most popular was 1987, when the UN Commission Environment and Development was asked to present a report and this report was called Our Common Future, or another name is Brundtland Report, because Gro Harlem Brundtland was the Prime Minister of Norway, but she also was the President of the Commission, and her report was named after her. The concept of sustainable development was defined in that report, and it was defined as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And despite the fact that there are many definitions of sustainable development, if you just Google, you will have thousands of definitions. But this one is the most common. And then to be more precise, there are two key concepts concerning that definition, because there is the concept of needs. Needs, in particular, the essential needs of the world's poor, to which overriding priority should be given. But needs are not only basic needs, not only biological existence. So these needs are beyond simply biological existence. And another idea is the idea of limitations imposed by the state of technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet present and future needs. So it is recognized that there are some limitations in meeting the needs. There are various models of sustainable development, and this particular one contains, and most of the models contain, three issues. So environmental issue, social issue, and economic issue. And there are points which overlap, and if all the three overlap, that means that the development is sustainable. Here, the same model, basically environment is on the top and social issues are on the left and economic on the right, but that's not very important. But there are explanations to these terms. So environmental development means a viable natural environment. Viable in this context means being able to live. Viable is connected with life, so able to survive. Social issues mean nurturing community. Nurturing would mean well prospering or raising, so something which is doing, the community which is doing well. And economic means sufficient economy, so sufficient that doesn't have to be explained, simply sufficient enough for everyone. And between environmental issues and economic issues, there can obviously be conflict. For example, the case of energy sources and how the change of certain energy sources will affect the country economically. And on the border between environmental in the economic issues is sustainable economic development. So the development which can't be based on one kind of resources, for example. The whole economy based on oil in some countries. This is a big mistake. Although the country can develop very well, but then when oil ends or the demand for oil ends or diminishes, then the country can't prosper very well. And on the border between economic and social, you have equitable social environment. Equitable, we will talk later what equitable means. And between environmental and social issues, we have sustainable, natural, and built environment. So there are obviously problems. For example, environmental issues would demand closing some factories which pollute environment, but from social point of view, that would mean that people will lose job. So that problem has to be solved. I have promised you to explain what equality is and equity. So, because there are similar terms and they do not mean exactly the same. And here is a famous picture which explains equality versus equity. Equality is, here it's explained as sameness, so being the same, giving everyone the same thing. It only works if everyone starts from the same place. And here you can see some game and children watching this game, and the smallest child, although or he or she, rather he, is given support, he still can't watch the game or can watch through the holes in the fence, but the support doesn't work for him. And equity means access to the same opportunities. So first we must ensure equity before we can enjoy equality. So we have equality in outcome, but and everyone has the same opportunities. So you can see that the smallest child received 2 boxes, and now he can watch the game in the same way as other children, and the biggest boy does not need any support, so he didn't receive any. So that's the explanation, and this picture had various modifications. This particular modification is just different boys, they have darker skin, but basically it means the same. But here you have some more subtle modification, and here you can see that these children are more or less the same in size, but the circumstances are different, and you have to give the same opportunities because they didn't have the same opportunities at start. So that's another modification of the picture. And here another modification is focusing on disabled, on disability. Here you have clearly a child with disability, with physical disability. Not everyone watches games, so for these people who do not enjoy watching games, the modification includes goods like apples, so food, so unequal access to food, and maybe the most convincing example is education, because in education, in assessing the performance of students, we can see the case when children are from neglected families, they have unequal opportunities, and these pictures focus on the approach to education. For example, in this picture, you have clearly said that in the case of equality, in every case you have just high standards, which is okay. But in case of equity, apart from high standards, you have great teachers which can help you, and you have also individual support. When someone talks about equity, just the bell rings, because equity is, in other words, fairness, and who decides what's fair? And here in this cartoon you have the answer, but what is the real answer? And now maybe negative examples will explain that. For example, in the 70s, 80s, well, that's what I remember. In Poland, during the time of communism, obviously, there was the decision that candidates for the study received points for social background. And if you belonged to workers' family or peasants' family, you would receive some points. If you were from intelligentsia family, you will not receive points. Or if you were handling private business, small business, obviously the only small business was allowed during communism, you also you didn't get any points either. So the number of points was not very big, but nevertheless that caused the feeling of unfairness, especially when workers usually earned very well and their children had priority. They had more points if they wanted to get to the university, and some members of intelligentsia were really poor. So that was obviously unfair, and this didn't work either, because the idea was that the number of children going to study from working class will increase, but that really didn't work. Another example is a contemporary example, and it comes from South Africa, where the constitution says that no discrimination is allowed, but the exception is for previously disadvantaged groups. And these previously disadvantaged groups are mainly people who are not white, and also in some cases women are treated as previously disadvantaged. And now the problem when the outbreak of COVID-19 started is that many businesses were closed, and they can apply for help from the government. But there are two versions. Some versions says that only those which have 51% of ownership, of black ownership, will be helped, and the other businesses will not be helped. And the other version says that those with black ownership will have priority, but everyone can apply. Nevertheless, this is obviously unfair, and the fact that someone is black does not mean that he or she needs help. The fact that someone's parents were discriminated against does not mean that this person is now discriminated against. So just taking race as the only criterion for help or for any action that could give advantage now is totally unfair. So as you can see, there is much controversy about any policy which includes equity. So if not equity, what can we do instead? You remember the picture I showed you at the beginning, and now we have a third picture, and in the third image all three can see the game without any supports or accommodations because the cause of inequity was addressed. The systemic barrier has been removed. So that would be the ideal situation when simply the barriers which are preventing equity are removed. So no supports are given, just the barrier is removed. And we have this third situation we call liberty. So liberty means freedom, and again that's the problem, because that's some people value more equity than freedom, as you could see at the cartoon, but here we have simply freedom. And here in the third picture you have yet another situation where support is given to everyone, but you have inequality. You have inequality, but everyone is in a better situation than it was in the case of giving support to provide equity. So you have no equity because you have the outcome is not that people are equal, but people are well off, and that's capitalism. So you have the third picture, and obviously some people can disagree with that, but that is one of the opinions which would favor free market. But once you make barriers to free market, then it becomes a problem. obviously now in the situation of the pandemic, you must make some barriers, because not every business can be operated without causing danger. So, well, we discussed this problem, but we won't discuss it anymore, and we will go to other models of sustainable development. In this model, for example, you have economics, ecology. So economics basically any economical issues. Economics is a kind of science, and economy is one particular economy, for example, economy of a country. And ecology, so that means environment basically. And instead of social issues, you have two things. You have politics and culture. So this model shows exactly in which field something was done well, and in which field it is bad or even critical. Here you have no situations which are bad or critical, but in terms of ecology, you have one field which is highly unsatisfactory. This is a compass model, which is an author's concept by Atkinson, and I took this picture from his work. And this is based on compass, and the letters are like in a geographic compass. So N is for nature, E is for economy, S is for society, and W is for well-being. So well-being is something which is singled out from society. Well-being more refers to an individual, and society means the whole society. For example, you have societal connectedness, caring, equity, and engagement. And in case of well-being, you have individual health, fulfillment, happiness, and, well, well-being. So that's another model. This model is similar to the first one I showed you, but it does not suggest compromise. When we had overlapping areas, we had an impression that beyond these overlapping areas, you have economy, for example, without taking care of environment or society or social issues, without taking care of economy, and so on. And here you have a pyramid, and this shows sustainable development in three aspects: profit, which is economy; people, which is society, social issues; and planet, which is nature or ecology or environment. Well, environment, maybe it's the best word, but that's something connected with our planet. At the bottom, you have four main issues. One is model nature. The other is humans and nature coexist. And as far as people are concerned, you have accept responsibility, and quality of life. Then you go to the second step of the pyramid, and you have energy flows on the side of the planet and share knowledge on the side of people. On the third step, you have eliminating waste on the side of nature, of planet, and on the side of people, you have to recognize interdependence. And on the top of pyramid, you have to create value. And this model is slightly different than the other models. It also shows three pillars of sustainable development, like economy, society, and environment. Nevertheless, here, economy, although it is in the center, it is constrained by the society. So that means that economy cannot develop without meeting social needs. So thinking about economic development, we should think about meeting the needs of the society. And both are constrained by environmental limits. So developing economy and meeting social needs, we can think about environment, and here environment is on the outside, but environment actually gives limitations to consumption, to unlimited growth, and also to unlimited social needs. Or maybe needs is a wrong word, unlimited demands.